subject, we can choose to let our minds explore other possibilities, to use our imaginations. For if we consider that astroscientists agree on one point, that the possibility of life elsewhere is not only quite probable, some feel it is there without a doubt. Let us suppose then that these objects are real space vehicles, extraterrestrial in origin, and not an illusion of the mind.
There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide at all.
Welcome to Somewhere in the Live Stream. I am your host, Ryan Sprague, and here we go, guys. We are a week in to Luis Elizondo's book Imminent coming out, and some pretty big interviews as well. Joe Rogan, NewsNation, all of which we will cover tonight. We will break down some of the more, I guess, popular or interesting clips to sort of come out of both of those interviews. I'm going to be honest right off the bat before we get to all of the Elizondo talk. I have not been able to finish the book or really digest a lot of it yet. As many of you know, I have kind of a big virtual conference happening next week, so I've been extremely busy. But hey, what a time for a book like this to come out just in time to celebrate Anomacon. But yes, I am making my way through it, and it's pretty interesting, to say the least. We will talk all about the book and those interviews later in the show with a surprise guest. I'm not even going to say surprise guest. It's our amazing moderator, Suzanne, is going to be joining us later in the show, guys. So stick around for that. It's going to be awesome. We're going to get her thoughts on Rogan's interview and Ross Coulthard's interview with Elizondo and everything in between. But before we do that, I want to give a special hello to all of our regulars that are in the chat. Some new people, too. We've got Eichinger is back. Again, welcome. Jay Lilly is here. Ruth Bradford is here. Ian Smith, the biologist. Jim is here. Dalen is here. Love it, love it. Donnie Falls. Mario Woods is here. Welcome, my friend. Guys, if you haven't watched or listened to our interview with Mario Woods, man, you are missing out. Go back in the archives and check out that incredible interview that we did with Mario. He also was featured in one of the last chapters of my newest book, Somewhere in the Skies, Stories from Somewhere in the Skies, excuse me. So be sure to check his story out in there as well. Welcome, Mario. Thanks for being here. Michael Huntington is here. Hello, UAPers, ufologists, and lunatics. Whoa, lunatics. That's a new one. I like it. You got to trademark that, man. Go Beckley. Poppy is here. Melissa Brock, hello. Android Paranormal, as always. Welcome, my friend. C&B Adventures is here. All right, guys. I'm just scrolling through. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight for what I promise will be a very interesting show. A little more talk shop before we do anything else. Anomacon is fastly approaching. It is this next Sunday. So be ready for something incredible, guys. We have so Suzanne will laugh at this, but when I told her I was doing Anomacon again, I told her, yeah, I'm gonna have like 8 to 10 speakers. We'll do one day, it'll be maybe 3-4 hours. That did not happen. I think we're up to about 38 speakers. So yeah, Anomacon 2024 is going to be epic. That is going to be September 1st and September 2nd. And we have speakers talking about everything you can possibly think of having to do with the anomalous. And that will all be taking place right here on YouTube, on Twitch, on X, and on Facebook as well. So you'll be able to live stream the entire event on all of those platforms. And it will also live in perpetuity right on the YouTube channel after that. But if you want to learn more about all of our incredible speakers, we have musicians doing music this year, featuring music videos. It's just getting bigger and bigger every day, and I'm so excited, guys. So you can learn more at anomacon.com right there on the bottom of your screen. And I think, let's see, that's it. Oh, I should let you guys know Anomacon will be beginning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on September 1st and 2nd. So set your alarms, set your calendars, hit that notification bell on the Anomacon Days 1 and 2 videos right here on YouTube already. And you will not miss it when it starts. Another cool thing is we are going to be taking donations throughout all of Anomacon. And we have chosen 3 charities that have one thing in common, and that is organ transplants. So, for those of you who may not be aware, my mother was a kidney and pancreas transplant recipient. And gosh, I think we got an extra 27 years of life with my mother after she had her transplant. And I will forever be thankful and blessed for that, and for the individual who unfortunately lost his life, but gave my mother a second life and gave us 27 extra years with her, with the kidney and pancreas transplant. So this year, I have decided that our charities for Anomacon and all of your donations during that event will be going to, I want to get this right, the Donate Life America. It will also be going to the Organ and Tissue and Blood Donation of Canada, and also the NHS Blood and Tissue Donation Organization as well. So we're covering America, Canada, and all of the United Kingdom, with 3 different charities having to do with those incredible endeavors. So yeah, be on the lookout for that next week. All of your donations will go 50-50. They will be split between all of our speakers, and the other 50% will be going to all of the charities as well. You'll be able to find out more about those charities when Anomacon starts as well. Lastly, let me see here. Oh, we have a new way to support the show if you'd like to help support somewhere in the live stream and somewhere in the skies. And that is through ByMeACoffee, which is basically kind of like I know there's another app called Kofi, there's Venmo, there's PayPal, all that stuff. We do PayPal, we do super chats as well. But if you want to help the show in another way, you can do the Buy Me a Coffee. We will have a QR code up on the screen later for that. There's also a link in the show notes as well. And these are just one-time ways to help us out here at Somewhere in the Live Stream. As many of you know, everything we do is free to consume, but it's not free to create. So every penny you give to us helps us continue Somewhere in the Skies and Somewhere in the Live Stream. That being said, the super chat and super stickers are open tonight as well. If you'd like to help support that way, we will feature your comments and your questions at the end of the show through the super chat as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and check this out before we get to the news of the week, guys. Jim, thank you so much for the super sticker, man. Truly do appreciate that. Truly. And truly. Also truly. Suzanne's reminded me we have merch. We now have merch for Anomacon as well. So if you want to rock some Anomacon merch and help support us in style, you can find all of our merch at anomacon.com as well. So there we go. Talk shop is done, guys. Talking about money is done. Let's get to the good stuff, and that is the news of the week. And we're going to start with a story we've been talking about, unfortunately, for a little while now, and that is our poor stranded astronauts out there. Remember them? Well, we've got an update. They're still there, and they're going to be there for a while. So this story comes to us from CNN. SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule to return Boeing Starliner crew to Earth. So, yeah, this is interesting. The competitor of Boeing, which is SpaceX, is going to be helping out and finally getting our poor stranded astronauts back to Earth for what was supposed to be an 8-day mission. This is crazy. So the Starliner vehicle, which carried astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore to the space station in early June, suffered setbacks with helium leaks and thrusters that abruptly stopped working on the initial leg of its first crewed test flight. Engineers spent weeks attempting to better understand the issues, and Boeing said as recently as August 2nd that its, quote, confidence remains high that the spacecraft would be able to return Williams and Wilmore to Earth. But that seemed to change this week. So I'm going to go ahead and play this clip, guys. This comes to us from CBS, which will crystallize a little bit more of the update on this story and what's going on with our poor astronauts out there stranded on the ISS. So let's give this a watch.
NASA has finally revealed how it plans to pull off its newest mission, getting 2 astronauts back to Earth. Their saga began with what was supposed to be an 8-day test flight into orbit aboard Boeing's Starliner capsule. Well, now instead of 8 days, it will be 8 months. All of it a blow to an American aviation giant now stumbling in space. CBS's Mark Strassman is in Houston tonight and leads us off with the very latest. Mark?
David, this is one of the most consequential safety decisions for NASA in a generation. To bring home these 2 astronauts, the space agency will now look past Boeing's Starliner to Boeing's competitor, SpaceX.
NASA has decided that Butch and Sonny will return with Crew 9 next February.
NASA's decision switched spaceships and space companies mid-mission.
Ignition.
Back in June, astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams flew to the International Space Station on Boeing's Starliner. But now they'll fly home next February in a SpaceX Crew Dragon. Despite Boeing's insistence, Starliner is safe to fly them back.
You know, it's disappointing that they're not coming home on Starliner, but that's okay. It's a test flight.
NASA spent weeks analyzing issues Starliner developed on its flight to the ISS. Specifically, helium leaks and the overheating of small maneuvering thrusters. That propulsion system's critical to the return flight home, including undocking and the braking burn on the return to Earth. The small engines need to fire hundreds of times to keep the spacecraft in the precise orientation for safe re-entry and on-target touchdown. Instead, Starliner will return uncrewed next month.
There was just too much uncertainty in the prediction of the thrusters. It was just too much risk with the crew.
In a statement, Boeing said, "We continue to focus first and foremost on the safety of the crew and spacecraft. We are executing the mission as determined by NASA." But NASA's decision is bound to frustrate the legacy aerospace giant in what the space agency admitted was a dramatic change.
So how now do you begin to rebuild that relationship of trust with Boeing?
Oh, I don't think we're rebuilding trust. I think we're looking at the data, and we view the data and the uncertainty that's there differently than Boeing does.
The 2 astronauts originally were supposed to spend 8 days on the space station. Today is their day 80 in space, and now they have another 6 months more to go. David?
Just have to get them home safely. Mark Strassman, thank you so much.
There you go, guys. I love they said we see it differently from Boeing. You know, we're looking at the data, and the data is not good. So I have a feeling that maybe Boeing won't be in charge of the next capsule to go out there, but who knows? Who knows? So in a statement Saturday, Boeing said it, quote, continues to focus first and foremost on the safety of the crew and the spacecraft. I know they mentioned that in the video. We're executing the mission as determined by NASA, and we are preparing the spacecraft for a safe and successful uncrewed return. Steve Stitch, NASA's commercial crew program manager, said that there was, quote, just a little disagreement between NASA and Boeing in terms of the level of risk. I'm sure that was an interesting conversation, and I'm sure it was just a little disagreement for sure. Let me see here. It just depends on how you evaluate the risk, Stitch said. Quote, we did it a little differently with our crew than Boeing did. So, yeah. There's so many questions that could be asked of like how this 8-day mission turned into, like they said, like what do you say, 80 days or something like that? Um, and people are saying up in the chat, like, what about the resources on the ISS? Like, can it sustain 2 extra astronauts? And will they be able to get stuff to the ISS if they needed to stay there longer? The other big thing is the I guess the physiological effects that being up in the ISS for that long can have on these astronauts. I mean, they were training for an 8-day mission, and the fact that they're up in space, which, I mean, what's that quote? Like, everything in space wants to kill you. Literally everything in space wants you dead. It does not want you out there. But we persevere at great risk to the human body, the human psyche, humanity in general, about what we find out there. And yeah, I wonder like how these astronauts will fare after all this time in terms of like just, a lot of astronauts lose like their vision when they're in space for too long. It can be very detrimental to your bones, your muscles, all of that stuff. So yeah, I'm really interested to see what effects this will have on the astronauts. And let's just hope they get back in one piece in February. So yeah, there's our little update on the NASA story. I'm going to go up in the chat for just a little bit, see what you guys are saying. Repo says Boeing is on a slow decline. Don't see them recovering well once losing NASA. Yeah, I mean, look at all the issues with their planes here on Earth. I mean, God, every time I get on a flight and I find out it's a Boeing, I'm like saying 50 Hail Marys and stuff and texting everyone I know to tell them I love them. What do they want the other astronauts to do? Order some Uber Eats? Yeah, just more money in the pockets of Elon, for sure. Wait, does Elon have anything to do with Uber? I might just be making that up in my head. I'm drinking whiskey tonight, guys. That's where I'm at on Elizondo week. Did you see him on Rogan smoking the stogies? And I'm sure they were tipping back some whiskeys too. That seems like something those two would do together. I'd be interested to know what they did prior to or after that interview. Repo says the astronauts can simply order Domino's from the secret moon base for sure. What else are you guys saying up here? Michael says exercise is key for space health. Exactly. So hopefully they're getting some good workouts up there on the ISS. I wonder if they have like workout equipment and how they do that, with like almost zero gravity. Android says, I had a feeling something was going to go wrong about the third mechanical delay. I'm just glad it didn't result in an explosion. So it could. Yes, very good point. It could have been much, much worse. Much worse. All right. I like this comment. Boeing is too focused on reverse engineering of alien artifacts. Ooh, good timing on that one. We'll get to that later in the show for sure. Cheers right back at you, biologist. A big welcome to Metal Hendrix, to James Craig. Welcome, guys. Good to see you here, as always. If I'm forgetting anyone, all work, low pay. Hello. Hello, guys. All right. What do we got next? Ooh, we're moving to my neck of the woods. Let's do a story from the United Kingdom. This is an interesting one. And it involves this man. How do I get back on the screen? There I am. So a new documentary claims, quote, paranormal library in palace as King Charles seeks the UFO truth. That is a weird headline. I barely made it through that. Basically, it's saying that King Charles has an interest in UFOs. And as we'll see, that traces back throughout the royal family. So a new documentary called The King of UFOs explores reports of the monarch's inherited secret library of books and files on the phenomenon, plus other subjects such as crop circles and the paranormal. It also suggests that the late Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth II communicated with UFO believers several times. And now King Charles is exploring his own interest in this fascinating topic, according to the documentary. So, what we're going to do now, guys, is watch the trailer for The King of UFOs and talk a little bit more about this fascinating story with the royal family in UFOs. So, let's go ahead and watch this trailer, and we'll talk a little bit more on the other side.
The royal family has been interested in UFOs for decades. This was always a matter of extreme sensitivity.
Documents going way back to the 50s.
The Queen sent scientific advisors to crop circles. They know more about it. They want to find out more.
Of course there's life somewhere else. And the royal family believe it.
Do you think the technology US pilots are seeing now in the skies could be linked to what Charles was flying?
This will leak, and it will cause quite a scandal.
There were dome-like projections around each of the pilots. Charles and his engineering crew were familiar with the craft.
So many sighting reports.
What are they here for? What's Charles going to respond to?
Their interest is based on factual knowledge that they've been able to get access to that we don't.
It would alarm people. My God, these things are dangerous. It's a bit like a Pandora's box. If we took the lid off and looked inside, we'd never be the same again.
There we go, guys. The King of UFOs. What a fascinating sort of side story. I wish they had covered this in The Crown. That would have been pretty cool. I would have kept watching for sure. Dalen says, I knew Charlie was an alien. She also asks, didn't Charles' father and Uncle Mountbatten have a UFO thing too? Yes. You are one step ahead of me, Dalen. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. And Eichinger says, King C piloted a craft, they say. Yup. Apparently, King Charles flew a UFO. What? Gary also says, we already know of Prince Philip's interest in this topic. Yes, we do. So, let me see here. I'm going to read a little bit more from the article, and then I'm going to show you guys another interesting clip that has to do with this. So in the article, it says, one of the most bizarre claims made in the new film is that the then Prince Charles was seen piloting an experimental UFO-style craft in Canada in 1975. So ufologist and filmmaker Mark Christopher Lee said, quote, retired police CID detective and now owner of the Great British UFO Learning Center, John Hansen, had regular correspondence with Prince Philip and the Queen, and states that they had their own library of UFO and paranormal books. Prince Philip was very much at the forefront of royal interest in this, although arguably he was introduced to this by Earl Mountbatten, his uncle. And actually, it's funny this story comes up because I actually talked about this on Ancient Aliens. So I'm rolling the dice here, guys. I'm going to go ahead and play a little bit from that Ancient Aliens episode where I talk all about this connection. I hope we don't get a copyright strike as we're streaming. I'm willing to take the hit afterwards, but we'll see. Hold your breath and see if we make it through this clip. This is from Ancient Aliens, and we're doing this for educational purposes. So let's go ahead and play that now and talk a little bit more and move on from there. Pretty interesting, right? It all started with a bricklayer. who had a close encounter. And then the interest continued throughout the family. And it doesn't surprise me that what Prince Philip would then tell his son, Charles, about the topic would bleed over, and that he would then have an interest in UFOs as well. Let's finish out this story here because there's a couple things I want to talk about. The film King of UFOs has exclusive access to unreleased archives and interviews with witnesses, and also explores the extraordinary claims made by a Canadian diver that while working on a secret military project at Sandy Point, Canada in 1975, he saw Prince Charles piloting an experimental UFO type craft, as we mentioned earlier. The diver states that the craft was powered by an electromagnetic force, and Charles was one of 3 pilots in the craft who were taking it to the NASA base at Langley in the US. What? Why? Why was he piloting it? Why was he bringing it to NASA? Like, inquiring minds want to know. So hopefully we'll find out in this documentary, which is available to stream right now, guys. You can check it out on Tubi, I believe, and Amazon Prime. So just look for the King of UFOs. Let me see here. The film also considers what King Charles's role would be in the event of first contact with ETs. He would have a pivotal role to play as head of state and as head of the Church of England and defender of all faiths, and would have to prepare his people for a high paradigm shift. And there would be political as well as spiritual implications to first contact. With UFO sightings increasing around the world, this may be closer than we think, and the king should be prepared. So there you go, guys. King Charles apparently flew a UFO, has an interest in UFOs, and it traces back throughout the royal family. So interesting. Be sure to check out that documentary if you haven't already. All right, we are moving to our next story, which is going to slowly transition further into Elizondo and imminent. But here we go, guys. This story came out by John Greenwald of the Black Vault. So, oh my gosh, I'm hiccuping already. Man, this is some strong whiskey. Suntory whiskey, Japanese. I got it when I was in Japan. It is amazing. Anywho, let's get the title here. ATIP memo unveiled at their FOI battle. DOD inconsistencies exposed. Whew, all right. I'm going to race through this, guys. The Black Vault has successfully obtained a crucial document through a Freedom of Information Act request, shedding light on the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP, a controversial program often linked to UFO investigations. The document, a draft memo authored by Luis Elizondo, a former Department of Defense counterintelligence agent, confirms ATIP's mission of studying advanced technologies and, quote, unexplained or unknown aerial systems. This revelation challenges the DoD's longstanding denial of Elizondo's involvement in the program and raises questions about the Pentagon's transparency. The memo's release followed a prolonged FOI battle during which the DoD initially denied the existence of any related documents. However, persistence by the Black Vault led to the discovery of the memo, despite significant delays, redactions, and legal disputes. After years of FOI requests and appeals, the Black Vault obtained a memo written by Elizondo that confirms the existence and scope of ATIP, contradicting previous Pentagon denials. Let me see here. To further this, the Black Vault's efforts to acquire the memo involved multiple appeals after initial denials by the DoD, which claimed no relevant documents existed. The process highlighted significant bureaucratic obstacles and inconsistencies. The DoD's use of the, quote, deliberate process exemption to redact portions of the memo, despite the information being public elsewhere, raises legal questions and adds to this controversy. So, oh my gosh, it's just like back and forth, back and forth. in terms of like it exists, it doesn't exist. Like it exists. It was there clearly. Regardless of why this memo was not discovered and denied to exist in 2021, it likely won't settle the debate about Elizondo's claimed leadership of ATIP or the stated objectives of ATIP once and for all. For some, this is John saying this in the article. For some, this memo will absolutely be viewed as a pivotal piece of evidence in the ongoing debate over ATIP's scope and Elizondo's involvement. To them, this will serve as undeniable proof, if they even felt undeniable proof wasn't already out there to begin with. To others, the release of this may simply be seen as a draft memorandum that was authored by Elizondo, without definitively proving his leadership or directorship of a, quote, funded UFO program known as ATIP. And in the end, to them, it will prove nothing. But even as early as just days ago, the DoD still continues to deny Elizondo's involvement in ATIP, a claim Elizondo clearly disputes. However, that was prior to the DoD releasing this memorandum. So the Black Vault reached out to the Pentagon for comment. How does this not contradict the DoD's stance on Luis Elizondo and the denial of his official responsibilities on ATIP? This was John asking the Pentagon. Why would he be drafting such a memorandum if ATIP had long been canceled per DoD and that he had no official responsibilities on it? After the publication of the article, Pentagon spokeswoman Susan Goff submitted comment by stating, quote, Luis Elizondo had no assigned responsibilities for ATIP. As noted in the historical record report, ATIP was never an official recognized DoD program. The draft unsigned memo, for the record, that you reference was crafted by Mr. Elizondo and appears to be unsolicited. Given the opportunity to respond to the above, Elizondo would say the memo they claim was unsolicited was in fact a request by none other than the Secretary's front office staff. Not only is the DoD spokesperson wrong, but any due diligence on their part would have illustrated this. This is yet another sad attempt to once again deceive the American people by a select few in the Pentagon's PAO. Unfortunately, this type of behavior conducted by a few bad faith individuals only further damages the credibility of the organization, who has very little credibility left to offer. Oof. This is followed up by John saying, why would the DoD tell me this memo didn't exist, but I later would be successful getting it after an appeal from the same office that denied it existed in the first place? After publication, Pentagon spokeswoman Susan Goff submitted comment by stating, quote, as indicated in the response letter to you dated December 14th, 2021, the initial FOIA request search did not yield responsive records. Elizondo did respond saying, this response isn't even worthy of a response. It's clear that obfuscation and deceit is the new norm for the same few. I would once again remind them that propaganda and disinformation against the American public is illegal. Elizondo provided the following quote to John Greenwald to close out this story, guys. Thanks to the Black Vault's continued pursuit of the facts, the DoD had no choice but to relent and admit the obvious. ATIP was a real program and funded. My former employer has had and currently has a keen interest in ATIP and the UAP topic. There remains a clear national security nexus as it relates to UAP. My fear is that unless more people demand the truth, this information, which many of us already knew, would never see the light of day and remain hidden from the public. An excellent example of the Black Vault not taking no for an answer. Oh, man. That's a lot to digest, guys. I know I read a lot, but, you know, we got to be as accurate as we can with these things. Well done, John Greenwald, says Ian Smith. You can find the entire DoD response to John at the link that Susan provided and in the show notes as well. In Greenwald, we trust. look, I know there's people in the chat right now who are not big Elizondo fans either. You guys can have the debate in the chat. I'm just reporting on what John has said, and I will be reporting later in the show on some of the stuff said in the interviews by Elizondo as well. So there you go. Let's see here. Kurt says, Senator Harry Reid put that claim to rest. People need to get over it. Lou was in charge. There will be more coming out about that in the future. All right, guys. So what we're going to do now is take a very quick break. We're going to come back and talk about the News Nation interview between Ross Coulthard and Luis Elizondo, and also the Joe Rogan interview, as well as we begin our second half of Somewhere in the Live Stream. It's going to be fun. We got a couple clips. We're going to bring Suzanne in to get her thoughts on these as well. So go ahead and take a little break, grab a drink, have a little whiskey with me, and I'll see you guys on the other side as we continue things with Somewhere in the Live Stream. See you in just a sec. The Somewhere in the Skies podcast is free to listen to every week, but if you would like to help support the show, we have a very active Patreon page where you give what you think the show is worth. In return, you'll get early access to the main show, bonus episodes, and priority to ask our guests your listener questions. Your support truly makes the show continue and grow. So, to learn more and to join, visit patreon.com/somewhereskies. And welcome back to Somewhere in the Live Stream. Guys, you just saw an ad for Anomacon, which I will remind you, once again, is next week, next Sunday and Monday, September 1st and 2nd, right here on YouTube. It'll be live streaming all day long, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have over 36 speakers talking about everything anomalous. We have music videos about the anomalous. We've got it all. It's going to be so much fun. It is 100% free. We'll be taking donations for charity and also to help compensate our speakers as well. So yeah, you can learn all about Anomacon at anomacon.com. All right, let's get to what everyone's talking about. Imminent, the book. It's out. Have you read it? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I mentioned at the top of the show, I haven't had a chance to read the entire book yet. I am slowly making my way through, taking notes, doing all that good stuff. I got those little yellow tabs, that you buy to mark things. So, yeah. Be on the lookout in the future for a review of the book. But 2 big interviews came out this week as well. I mean, a few others too, but kind of the big, most visible ones would have to be the one at News Nation and also, obviously, Joe Rogan. So I am going to play a couple clips from the News Nation one. Again, I hope we don't get taken off the air for playing these, but before we do that, I'm going to bring in our amazing moderator. She's going to have to leave you guys in the chat for just a little bit, so be on your best behavior. But I want to hear from her about all of this. So yeah, without any further ado, let's bring her in, the one and only Suzanne. Welcome back. Oh my gosh, you're on mute.
There we go.
There you go.
Hi.
You were doing the polite thing as always. I've done it. How are you?
I'm really good. Really good. Hope you are too. And everybody in the chat seems to be in fine order.
Everyone's been great. This has been an awesome episode so far. And yeah, the chat is blowing up. So so yeah, the last time I had you on, I believe we were discussing the lawsuit, right?
Yes.
That with David Grush.
Right.
Before we get to Elizondo, I gotta ask, you are a former attorney. We have talked on air and off air about that case, that scandal. I don't know what we really want to call it, but
Hot mess works.
Yeah, exactly. Have there been any developments on the Grush lawsuit that you've been aware of? I don't know if I missed anything, or where is it right now in terms of what you've looked into?
Well, there has been one development, and I'm working on the details of it, but somebody filed what's called a demurrer, which is a fancy word for a motion to dismiss the case that Grush filed. I'm having a struggle with the clerk's office there, but yesterday managed to find a lawyer locally who can just electronically retrieve them for me and send them to me as they pop up. So I'm anxious to see what's in this. A demurrer, or a motion to dismiss, basically says if the plaintiff, who's Grush in this case, hasn't stated a case that even if true could go forward, then it needs to be dismissed. And so I suspect that's what we're going to see. I don't know which party has filed it, which of the defendants has filed it. So it'll be interesting. I hope to have it later in the week, and I'll send it on out there.
Interesting. Okay, so we could see a possible dismissal, and we don't know who that other person is, right?
Right.
Okay.
And then motions to dismiss are not granted very often for a couple of reasons. One is, this early in a lawsuit, the lawyers are going to claim on Mr. Grush's behalf that there hasn't been enough time to really learn the facts and the evidence. And so this is a premature action. That's typically what you're hearing at these things. Also, just from a legal perspective, judges are hesitant to grant them if there is any string with which to bind it to stick, because they get reversed a lot by the appellate courts in the system. So I don't think, unless I look at something in that document and Grush's lawyers have made some big mistake somewhere, which I just don't think is very likely, then it's probably not going to get dismissed, but we'll watch.
We'll wait and see. Well, in the meantime, we have plenty to talk about with another quote-unquote whistleblower, and that is Luis Elizondo. So,
Yes.
First question. The book is out. Have you had a chance to read the entire thing yet? Or where are you right now on Imminent?
I consumed it immediately read every word of it, highlighting as I went, trying to get my brain wrapped around what he was saying, whether anything was different from what Grush had told us in the congressional hearings. And I didn't really find discrepancies. Others may have analyzed a little more closely, but I did have a couple of takeaways that I thought were interesting. He is clearly confirming what Grush told Congress. Number one, we have craft. And he named names. Grush did not name names about where those craft were. And he was very clear to say where they were. And it made me think he thinks they've been moved. But who knows where they were. And we also have biologics. And he named names on where those biologics were as well, or where they used to be.
I think I have a clip of that.
Yeah, that was a big, bold move. Just call them out. Also, I don't know if it struck you as interesting, but his comment, and you may not have gotten there yet, but his comment about whoever can control this technology identified through the 5 observables, or sometimes the 6 observables we hear about, can control the world. And I don't know, it caused me to pause a minute. And I get, I can really see the implication of that if our governments are holding these technologies, it's time to talk about it, because it is a worldwide game changer on what's going in and where is that power and control centered and held.
Yes. And I guess I'm just going to name drop here. Sorry, guys. I was in California, and I was hanging out with Jeremy Corbell, the investigative filmmaker, and we were doing something having to do with Bob Lazar. Say what you will about that whole thing, but we were having this conversation about if this technology exists. Let's say something that Bob Lazar said is true. We are in control. The U.S. has the technology. And I just remember Jeremy saying something very similar. Mind you, this was like 4 years ago at this point.
Wow.
And he said, like, whoever possesses this technology, game over.
Game over.
And
Right.
that did always stick with me. It really did. It gave me chills when he said that. And the more I sat with that, the more I really thought, yeah, he's right.
Yep.
And no
He is
wonder it's being kept so secret and it's moving around and
Right.
trying to stay out of, I guess, oversight so that it doesn't get, leaked to the public. A part of me is like, okay, I kind of understand that. However, as we'll see in these clips, like, a lot of people pay the price for that
Absolutely.
secrecy, and that is a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
I also found it interesting on what seemed to me, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but when he learned about the Colares, Brazil incident in 1977 and 78, that seemed to be a game changer for him. And I think it was based on the odd human injuries and deaths that occurred interacting with these non-human intelligences, including things like bodies being burned, but clothing not being burned. And there was just something about his body language and facial expression in those things in the interview when he's talking about those things, that I thought this was a moment in time for him to realize how powerful all this was, or how inexplicable it all was. I'm not sure, but it seemed to me a game changer.
Yeah. I think I recall in the NewsNation interview him saying it was like Alice in Wonderland. Like, I
Right.
really went down a rabbit hole.
Right.
Ugh, man.
I think that'd be a normal human response, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And many of us in the chat have done exactly that. We have this experience. Luckily, most of us are not experienced humans who are killed or hurt the way things happened in Colares, but it causes you to go down that rabbit hole. So I can imagine whatever he saw or heard or read about. I don't know what he did, but I can imagine that being a real game changer.
Yeah. All of this has clearly had an effect on Luis Elizondo. I mean, that's not really up for debate. The information he's bringing forward might be up for debate, but this all has clearly changed his life in many negative ways, I'm sure, as comparable to the positive ways. So why don't we, I guess, let's play the first clip that I pulled from the NewsNation interview. And then we'll kind of go clip by clip. I think I have 3 from NewsNation and 1 from Joe Rogan. So in this first clip, Suzanne, Elizondo talks about an alien implant that was supposedly removed from a veteran. So I'm going to go ahead and play that, and we'll talk about it on the other side. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Did you, in any of your UAP investigations, come across evidence of alleged abductions of humans by non-human beings?
We came across information that suggested that people were having things put inside their body that they did not give approval to.
So people have been taken away from their homes in the middle of the night and had things planted in them.
Something that was put inside their body, something invasive, right? Something that was not put there by their permission to do something.
You've seen one of those implants, haven't you?
I have been privy to some very interesting things.
This photo, he says, shows one of those interesting things. It's allegedly a biological sample removed from a US service member and submitted for analysis. This is possibly an alien implant.
Well, if you look, there's actually a piece of the chip sticking out and what appears to be these fibers that were moving on their own. And then it looks like this chip or whatever this is, this foreign object, is encapsulated by some sort of biological material.
Could that not be something biological, microbiological, or parasitic?
Well, it certainly, the outside looks like it's some sort of masking device. In essence, you have a foreign object, which it's a metallic object in there, and it seems to be encapsulated by some sort of biological material.
But how do you know it's not just a bit of metal that somebody's knocked into on a building site?
Well, in this particular case, this was moving on its own. It was actually had its own metabolic activity, and it terrified one of the doctors who was looking at this under a microscope. Said they didn't want to see this again.
All right.
Wow.
So, I don't know where to begin. What were your thoughts when you saw and read about this possible alien implant being removed and moving when it was removed from the patient?
I know. And it sounded to me like he saw it live and in action. And I love his body language and facial language, which lawyers are reading all the time, because he's leaning forward in his seat and his eyes are wide open. The intensity when he talks about it, also a game changer for him. So I'd love to know where those things are. I suspect he knows where they were. It'd be great if somebody could get their hands on them, but who knows?
Yeah. And you know what? This reminds me of, before we go any further, I just want to read what J. Allen Hynek said. I found something like that in my coffee once.
Me too.
I'm glad we can laugh about
laugh
this
a little
stuff,
bit.
guys. Yeah. Jim
Until we get the
says,
mystery solved.
yeah, if implant is surrounded in living material, surely could be DNA tested. Yeah, that's a really good point. I have it right on my shelf here somewhere. Communion by Whitley Strieber.
Yeah.
So I've read that book many, many times. I've listened to interviews with Whitley Strieber. I know, again, he's a very controversial figure. Some people believe him, a lot don't. However, there's one story about an implant that he had. I believe it was behind his ear that was removed. Yeah. And I don't remember the specifics because I looked into this very early on in my ufological career. But when the doctors removed it, it did the same thing. It like literally almost had like an intelligence or like almost like a emergency like exit strategy, and it started scooting away when they took this thing out.
Yikes.
Do you recall that? Did you ever read?
Vaguely. It's been a long time. That was my very first UFO book I read. And of course, when it was published as a novel. It wasn't published as his story.
Right.
And so it took some years then for that to catch up on what it actually was for him. So it's old memories, but very interesting. I wonder where his sample is.
Good question. I'd like to know that too. I'd like to know who did it, where it went. Yeah. Or maybe what if this had something to do with it? I mean, Elizondo said it came from a veteran. Whitley Strieber's not a veteran, but maybe it's the same technology that's covered in some sort of biologics as well. I don't know.
Right. Very weird, very unusual.
Yeah. Also, I didn't show it in the clip, but he's talking about the effects that UFOs have on specifically military people. And they did bring up the famous 1980 Rendlesham Forest incident in how John Burroughs, one of the service members involved, had severe heart problems after the event. And
vision problems as well. I think he had problems with his eyes.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't remember that part. Wow. So there you go. I mean, and
100%
he
disabled by our military as a result of those injuries. So no horsing around there. Somebody took it seriously.
Right. And I believe it took like John McCain and other people to like fight to get this guy like the VA help he needed.
Yes, I
to
remember
have,
that
like,
now that you say it. Right.
Yeah, life-changing surgery.
Right.
And I think it was the first time ever where like the United States government admitted that like health problems occurred because of a UFO event, something like that. I'm probably butchering that, but yeah, I found that fascinating as well. And they did bring that up in the interview too.
That was absolutely fascinating. And, I wish we could be more open. Our government would be more open. Sorry.
Hi, Bill.
Hello.
Hi.
I wish we could be more open about where those samples are, because wouldn't that be an incredibly concrete piece of evidence? We're going to know immediately if it's human DNA or it's not.
Exactly.
And it seems like the answer to a huge question could be solved in that one DNA sample.
Yep.
So I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear about it and see what they've done. I highly suspect it's been done and we just don't have it. You know, don't have access to it. Can't imagine somebody not saying, let's test this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, Elizondo's got the photos, so he clearly knows, like, the what do they call that? Chain of custody.
That's right.
Whatever that thing is and where it is. So
Exactly.
I don't know. Maybe someone like Gary Nolan's in possession of it. Ballet. Something.
Right. I do think Gary Nolan's involvement is really important. I also think Chris Mellon's involvement is really important, standing behind and with these guys to bring another level of credibility. And I know people have strong thoughts about Lou one way or the other, but I do think it's interesting that these really bright, incredible people are standing there with him in this capacity. I also, do you find it just so interesting that he and Grush both went through all this disclosure stuff and have gone so public, and despite disinformation campaigns, they all held on to their top-notch security clearances?
That is a really good point. Like, you would think at this point they would have stripped them of all this stuff. So,
and I think they tried, but I don't think it worked.
To me, that means they're on to something.
I agree.
Like, they're using it as a card almost,
I agree.
you know, a joker. Or I haven't played poker in years. I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. But, like, it to me, that screams that there's something truthful to this. I mean, if you're watching this, you're seeing, I've got the book Mirage Men displayed prominently. I did that on purpose. It's not by chance. Look, a lot of people are screaming disinformation on all of this. Elizondo, Grush, Mellon. And it's hard to not think about that when you read books like that.
It is,
and
isn't it? Yep.
You've seen what lengths intelligence people will go to disinform the public on this very topic of UFOs. So a part of me cannot blame those who are very skeptical of all of this. And a part of me understands those who truly want to believe. Everything these men are saying is validating what they've believed in for so many years. So this war, this phantom war in ufology, it continues. So I don't know. I'm like, what is it? Sweden? I'm always trying to stay neutral.
You're neutral.
Yeah. That's
well,
kind of
I don't know if you got to the point in the Coulthard interview with Elizondo, where Elizondo admits being a remote viewer. I found that fascinating.
Yeah.
And then Ross says something like, well, didn't DOD discredit the entire remote viewing process? And Elizondo's response is, whatever. Yeah, whatever.
Sure did.
Yeah. Y'all keep it up, right? Yeah.
I interviewed the director of a film called Third Eye Spies that talked all about remote viewing. Monagle was one of the members of the remote viewing team as well. I don't remember his first name, but I've watched some of those old clips of like them doing it and people training to do it. And I find it fascinating. I don't know where I lay on the whole remote viewing thing. Again, because I haven't actually done it a lot like CE5. Everyone's always telling me, you got to do it. You got to do it. Maybe I'll get to it one day. We'll see. But
you've got a few things going on.
Got a couple things going on, you and I, with Anomacon and, all of that. But, okay. So let's move to our next clip from Ross Coulthard and Elizondo. And for the first time ever, the public gets to see Elizondo's wife, who has stuck by his side through all of this. And
confirming what he's talking about, orbs and whatnot. Fascinating.
Right. It is interesting. And that's the clip. We're going to talk about the green orbs and the hitchhiker effect. So I'm going to go ahead and play that, and we'll talk a little bit more about the hitchhiker effect on the other side. Let me pull this up. Here we go.
Okay. He began experiencing what's known in UAP circles as the hitchhiker effect. UAPs were appearing at his home, perhaps because he was attracting them.
What started happening?
Oh, wow. Where do I start? Well, we would have these weird glowing balls of light in the house. They were green, they were small, they were diffuse, kind of like a little neon ball, and it really caused some disruption for my kids and my wife.
What were you seeing?
I would routinely see orbs.
What do you mean by orbs?
Small, little, spherical, green, lightish green type of color. And I'd be just walking down the hall, and I would just stop, and it would just continue to go right through the wall.
So we're talking about the hitchhiker effect. Something had followed Lou home from work.
Or by his very nature, yes.
How did he explain things? Was he able to talk about what was going on?
Not well.
I could imagine you were pretty angry.
I was very upset. The house had been turned upside down.
Oh man. So the biologist asks, isn't the hitchhiker effect with ghosts? Yes, but not just ghosts. I mean, all of the individuals who've been to Skinwalker Ranch claim hitchhiker effect, whether it's poltergeist or orbs or shadow people or UFOs or I don't know, werewolves smoking a cigarette, some crap like that. I don't remember. That was in George Knapp's book. Yeah. So what do you make of this whole hitchhiker effect thing? And now we're learning that Elizondo was not just on the sidelines with all of this. He's actually experiencing it as well. I'm not slurring my speech, guys, I promise.
Here's what I think. I think we ought to take it very seriously. And I would combine my analysis of both of their descriptions of the hitchhiker effect, along with people like Travis Taylor, who also talk about it from Skinwalker Ranch, with Lou's interview with Rogan, talking about what we are as beings, and the question of whether we're a body that temporarily contains consciousness, and when we die, it's over, or are we a consciousness taking possession of a body temporarily and moving on back to consciousness later. And in my mind, all this is somehow woven together. Obviously, I don't have answers, but I do think they're telling the truth about what they're watching. I will add, they don't seem to be able to explain it either. I would also throw in, as you're analyzing this, watch their body language, watch their facial expression as they tell it. It is very serious to them, and it is not a piece of cake. It's obviously upsetting. And then I think the firmness with which both Lou and Grush have said humanity is not alone, period. End of sentence. Essay's over. And the confidence with which they say it just winds it all together. So what it is, I don't know. Is it all related? I suspect it is. But I also think that we really don't understand the true weirdness of our reality and how all this works. And we're just digging into the quantum works, how a particle might be in two places at one time. And we know that it can happen, but we don't get how it works. So, it's a big ball of wax, I'm sure, and that answer is probably not very helpful, but it is a way at least to think about it while we wait for more information to come.
Mm-hmm. And again, to sort of promote Anomacon, we have several speakers who are going to be talking about the interconnectedness of all of this stuff, so I find that fascinating too. I also just met someone who works at the Hadron Collider.
Oh, yes, really?
So you can bet your butt I'm going to work that connection and try to get there and be like, what's going on?
I was gonna say, if you get to go, you better call me.
Yes, I will. I promise. We got to get over there and figure it out and see if we can go to another dimension or become black matter or something.
Yeah, let's watch somebody else do it first.
That's true. Yeah. Let's get some guinea pigs. Who in the chat wants to go?
We get some volunteers over there. Where's Dalen? She'll go.
Dalen will go. Yeah. I'm gonna go up in the chat just a minute and see what everyone's saying. The Men Who Stare at Goats, Donnie says. That was a good movie.
That's
that was
right.
a really good movie. Let me see. Okay, yeah, everyone's just talking about the clips, so that's great.
Good.
Let's move, Suzanne, to the last clip from the News Nation
All
one
right.
that I wanted to talk about. You brought this up earlier, and that's Elizondo took it a step further from Grush, and he named names of these locations where these legacy programs perhaps could have been, and where the materials of alleged UAP material was stored and or reverse engineered or worked on. And he names them in this clip. So I'm going to play the clip, and man, opening Pandora's box for sure. So
Absolutely.
let's play that, and we'll end with the News Nation one.
If it's true that the Pentagon's so-called legacy program has been secretly retrieving and studying non-human craft and even bodies, well, where are they? Area 51, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, or somewhere else? No one has come forward with those specifics. Not even famed military intelligence officer turned UFO whistleblower David Grush, who went public on NewsNation last year.
Those details were not approved for me to talk about.
But now, Lou Elizondo is going there. There comes a point in your book where you name names. You name Lockheed Martin, TRW, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Raytheon, BAE Systems, and the Aerospace Corporation as being some of the private corporations that are involved in working on retrieved alien technology. True?
It is true that it is in my book. Yep.
You also reveal how some non-human, alien biosamples are now being kept at Fort Detrick in Maryland, or with the FDA, and that they've been moved around so many times their origins have likely been forgotten. Elizondo claims that some of the answers, and perhaps the biological samples, can be found here at the Department of Health and Human Services, which oversees the FDA and the NIH.
Certainly we know that a lot of these samples were farmed out to experts like the National Institute of Health, NIH, and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, which absolutely fall under the authorities of this building. Logically, it makes sense that there are people in that building right now that may know the location of where these biological samples are. The defence companies Elizondo names, the Pentagon and the Department of Health and Human Services, all categorically deny Elizondo's claims. He says those denials are only possible because he could never get the evidence to prove their involvement once and for all. Your investigations wanted to investigate those samples and you were denied access.
We were, yeah.
You became increasingly aware, didn't you, that there were people in the Pentagon, in the intelligence community, in private aerospace, who didn't want you investigating UAPs?
Absolutely.
There you go.
Wow. So again, one of my biggest frustrations with the congressional UFO hearing with Grush is I can't tell you. Sorry, it's got to be in a what are those things?
Yeah.
A skiff. Yeah. Like I can't. Yes, I know where they were being held, but I can't tell you. Publicly. And then here we are. Like Elizondo's name dropping them all in his book. So I mean, was that like a strategy? Like Elizondo was like, Grush, don't say any of the names. You can tease it, and then what do they say? Like, you throw me the ball, and I'll go in for the touchdown with the book. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just imagining that funny thing in my head of Grush and Elizondo playing for the Detroit Lions. But what do you make of this? We now have locations that people like John Greenwald can start FOIAing for stuff, or people could literally start going and banging on the doors. Congress members can now go to BAE, to Northrop, to the various other places they mentioned. What do you make of all this, Suzanne?
I think the government's got a problem now, because now all of these institutions are out. Everyone knows where to get them. And of course, that problem can be solved by overclassification. They can keep things overly classified and overly broad in their classification, and no one's ever going to get them. They can also just lie to people, which we saw happen earlier with some documents that I think Grant LaVock got finally. So they might just not be telling the truth, but we know where to look, at least at a point in time. And I wonder too, was Lou saying he knew where they were and he leaned forward in his chair and he pointed his finger at Ross when he said it, and meaning that they might have since moved, or was he saying they're going to move now? And I don't know. I hope it's the latter, because there are probably people watching, that might, put a finger in the dike, so to speak, and stop it. Well, only time will tell.
Only time will tell. Yeah, they always said, like, when Bob Lazar came forward about Area 51 and all that, everything was swiftly moved to Area 52.
Right. That's
so
right.
maybe this is like a game of cat and mouse. We're gonna have to try to follow the breadcrumbs to where these materials end up, if they're still around. Like, maybe they've been implemented into our technology, a la Philip Corso and all that stuff he used to say.
I wish
don't
Ross
know.
pinned him down on the timing, right? And maybe he did, and it's on a cutting room floor somewhere. But wouldn't it have been nice to know, when do you last know where these things were?
Right.
As opposed to just the blanket statement. But maybe he wasn't cleared for it. I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah. And, like, these interviews can last 5-6 hours, and then it's shaved down to, like, 49 minutes, I think it was. Something like that. I'm going to go up in the chat for just a moment. There was a good question here.
Okay.
Jim says, in the book, Lou says he's been in a skiff. Is he compromising himself as a result? I don't know. I don't think so, because everything in the book was cleared by the Pentagon through Dopser. So, and that's a big misconception too. And he does even state in the beginning of the book, like, this is not the Pentagon like endorsing the book or saying what I'm saying is true. It's just the process it needed to go through, that I was not revealing any classified information. So with the amount of let's be honest, very sensational things in the book, if any of that is true and it's not classified, like, wow, I just wow. Like, I don't know what to say.
And don't you just hope FOIA requests went out at 100 a minute, after the first people finished the book and the video and whatnot. Totally. I hope people just papered them up to get it.
Right. And, we always bring up John Greenwald, but, like, you mentioned Grant LaVock has been doing incredible work getting both Australian and United States
just dog it. Will not quit. And that's what it obviously takes.
Yeah. And there are many others out there too. Dean Johnson is doing incredible work, and a lot of unnamed people who are out there doing these. Probably people right here in the chat have done it as well. So I commend all of you for doing that. I just don't have time. I did one FOIA back on the Tehran UFO incident, and that yielded amazing results, and I will never ever forget that.
It's not easy. It's not an easy task. It's not an easy game to play with them.
No, it's not. And John taught me that from the very beginning. Like, you can't go, dear government, what's up with UFOs? Like,
right. You have to put it in the right sentence with the right words and exclude the wrong words, and, sing the national anthem, stand on your head, and then cross your fingers. And you might get a response.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. Right. Jay Allen says, Greenwald and Elizondo are on speaking terms again. They are. Like,
interesting.
Those two have been kind of, little, the relationship was tarnished. I'll put it that way. But, John's doing good work, and he will admit when, he's either wrong or when there's a development. And as we saw earlier in the show, there was a big development. I know other journalists might disagree, and that's fine. Like, the story continues and the work continues on all sides of the spectrum. So it is good to see them talking again, I guess would be a way to put it.
It's so great when somebody actually gets something too. You feel like you have one more piece of that puzzle.
Exactly. Okay. So we went through, those were kind of the highlights, I'd say, from the News Nation. There were a few others, but we will leave that for you guys to watch. You can watch it right now on the News Nation YouTube channel, or I think I have the full thing on my Twitter account at Somewhere Skies. So you can watch it there as well, guys. It's like 49 minutes long. It's worth a watch. However, Suzanne, the one I did not get to watch, the big one, this is everyone's been hoping and dreaming and fantasizing about the Luis Elizondo, Joe Rogan conversation. So, first question, were you able to watch this interview?
I did. I watched it. I went back and watched some of it twice. Fascinating. Joe Rogan is not high on my list of people that I love to watch and listen to. But I thought that the two of them together actually did a really good job. And it was calm, which it's not always calm, calm and thoughtful. And I thought that was a really good outlet. I know his viewership is huge. And I thought at a minimum, it was a wonderful piece of the puzzle to go out into the universe, across the waves, so that people who may not be UFO people, but are Joe Rogan people, can take a peek and listen. And then I thought Elizondo did a really good job of confirming exactly what's in the book, exactly what he said to Ross Coulthart. So to me, it was like another level of confirmation between the two of them.
Okay.
A veracity check, I guess, is the way.
I like that. Yeah. You bring up so many good points. Like, I'm not a huge Rogan fan either. I feel like he can be an extremely aggro sort of interviewer. And yeah, it's just not my thing. But I do appreciate when he does challenge his guests, people like Bob Lazar, or even Elizondo or Grush. Like, yeah, he's willing to go to those lengths to do that. This was a very calm and collected interview. I feel like these two just really had good chemistry.
They did. Oddly, they did.
Just the limited footage I've seen. I've just seen clips, one of which I'll play in just a moment. But I guess, you know what? Let's play the clip, and then I do have another question for you, kind of comparing these two interviews. But I'll go ahead and play that right now. This clip is from the Joe Rogan show, in which Elizondo tells Rogan about a UFO that appeared to provoke a U.S. military aircraft coming within 15 feet of the cockpit. The encounter was caught on video. So let's go ahead and play that clip. And yeah, we will wrap things up with the Elizondo interviews in just a moment. Let's watch this.
There has been incidents where there appears to be some sort of provocation, where one of these things seems to be coming deliberately close to an aircraft, not necessarily trying to hit it, but maybe trying to demonstrate performance capabilities. There was one video in particular. I haven't been cleared by the Pentagon, so let me see if I can speak about it in general terms. There's a pilot flying, and you can hear on the radio this chatter back and forth. Do you see it? Do you have eyes down on it? Pilot, nope, negative, no eyes down. Okay, you should have it on radar. Yeah, I got something on radar, but no eyes, no, I can't see it. And then all of a sudden, a craft, an object goes whizzing right by the cockpit, and I mean probably like 15 feet away. And you can hear the pilot, the expletives of the pilot. I won't say it here on air, but you can imagine, right, what a pilot would say when they're very, very surprised. That was one. There's
Can you describe what he saw?
I think I can. I want to be careful that I don't, because again, I haven't had what I have approval to talk about. I've spoken about. Let me preface this by saying I still have my security clearance, and on occasion I still will consult for the U.S. government, and so I want to be very mindful. I have no problem going up all the way to the line.
Right, understood.
But if I put up, a pinky toe over that line, they're
right.
They're going to get me. But it was a wedge-shaped craft.
Wedge-shaped,
like triangular, but like a wedge. Like I don't know how else to describe it. I could draw it for you if you want. You want me to draw it?
Sure, you can.
Yeah. Give me a second.
So just like a wedge that you would like split wood with, like that kind of a wedge?
Yeah, but it was silver metallic, and like a diamond, maybe that's a better way to describe it, like a diamond almost. And it looked kind of like that. Really, it's just a little.
And that kind of shape is something that's been reported multiple times.
So that was the first time I ever saw something like that.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was. Keep in mind, I never followed this topic, so every time I'm seeing one of these videos, I'm kind of seeing something for the very first time. So lenticular, whether it's a disc-shaped craft, or it's a wedge-shaped craft, or a diamond-shaped craft, or a triangle-shaped craft, boomerang in some cases, these were all new to me. So it was very, very perplexing, and obviously to our military pilots, it was very concerning. And I think when you look at some of the gold standard cases we had, like the Nimitz, for example, that case. You have this overwhelming number of sensors looking at the same thing going on that the pilots are reporting. And for me, that was most compelling.
Isn't that interesting?
It is.
Yep.
Yeah. Again, and people have brought this up and they always do, like, okay, well, where's the video? Or like, it's just a story. That's probably the biggest, mantra in ufology. It's just a story. And I can't deny that. I can't argue that. I'm a man of stories. I've written 2 books about just stories. I also don't, pretend to think that everyone's going to believe the stories that I bring forward in my books. So that was interesting. The other thing, S. Hicks, Suzanne says, the Joe Rogan was only 2 hours. If Joe is excited about a guest, it can go for 4+ hours. I found that interesting. And then someone else said that Elizondo seemed nervous. I didn't really gather that from the limited stuff I've seen. It seemed like they were just very calm. Like this wasn't like a inquisition, I guess, or anything like that. What did you make? Like, what would be your overall, I guess, rating of how this interview went?
Well, I thought some of what might be interpreted as nervousness, because there is something going on there. But I think every time he gets close to his classified line, you watch that with him. So if you watch several interviews of him talking, there's almost always a point where he gets there and you're picking up a little anxiety or a little concern. I also think interesting choice of words with the word provocation. I don't know if that has specific military meaning. I suspect it does. I'm not sure it means how I would use the word, like I'm picking a fight is how I would use provocation. But I think we need to look at that wrapped into his comments about intent. What are these non-human intelligences' intent? And he says, we don't know. But I learned something from Lou. I love people who think about things a little bit differently, because I think learning how to think differently can really be useful. And he said at one point that, we can't assume what their intent is. And many of us have had that conversation for a long time. We don't know what their intent is. But people tend to say, well, if it was malevolent, they could have already done whatever it is they needed to do. If it's benevolent, same thing. But I thought when you wrap all that together, Lou made a really interesting point, which is they didn't intervene at Hiroshima or Nagasaki. They didn't intervene when nuclear plants melted down. So I thought, thinking about what has not happened can be just as important as what has happened. When you look at intent and when you call something provocation. So I would put it sort of in that jar to look at. I don't know really what he meant by the word provocation. And I think at some point, maybe in the book, he used that word. Don't hold me to that, but not meaning like trying to start an aerial fight or something. But thinking about intent that way, are they trying to provoke? Are they trying to get out of the way? Are they just trying to show us what they can do and how different they are? There's no way to know right now, but I suspect he has an opinion on it, but I bet that opinion bumps up against things that he can't talk about.
Yeah. Provocation is such an interesting word. It really is, because like if you look at the history of ufology, There are cases, there've been books written on it of you know, deaths caused by UFOs. But the thing for me, Suzanne, that I always struggle with is it's not so much like the Colaris case is maybe an exception. Like people were seriously injured allegedly by this craft and everything that went on there. Or you have like the Valentich case out of Australia, where a pilot went missing basically and died after encountering a UFO. You've got what was it? The one in the US in the early 40s. Was it?
Was
Oh
that
gosh.
Travis? What was his name?
It's escaping me at the moment. Someone in the chat will know.
Travis.
It was really early on where the pilot literally went up to pursue it and ended up nosediving because he lost
Right.
oxygen and crashed.
Right.
So I know if Michael Huntington is in the chat, he will know immediately which one I'm talking about. But the problem I have when it comes to provocation or people dying, having encountered these UFOs, is there can always be the possibility that it was pilot error, or that chasing the UFO caused the pilot to either use all their fuel, or maybe their instrumentation goes bad, or like some of these people, like they go so high in altitude that they pass out and crash. So that's where I always struggle when it comes to like provocation. Like the UFO is there, but Leslie Kane's even said this in the past. The threat isn't the UFO itself, but it's our reaction to it. It's our response to it. So a lot of the times I feel like any provocation probably comes from us more than it does the UFOs. I don't know.
I agree. And I think, we have to remember that we are easily scared. Our species is easily scared by what we don't understand and what we can't control ourselves. We need a certain level of control over our environments and to be comfortable. And so it could simply be our overreaction, but it could also be something else. Maybe we're annoying, maybe it's as simple as you're in our airspace, you're bothering what we're doing. We're going to move you out of the way one way or the other,
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And Dalen even brings up the nuclear missile angle to all of this too. They've apparently shut them down. They've turned them on at times. I think in Germany that happened
it also
in one
happened at
case.
Malmstrom Air Force Base. One at a time, they took them down in sequence, and then I guess brought them back up another time, something that was not technologically possible to do how they did it. And so I think that's an interesting piece of the puzzle when we talk about intent. There was obviously an intent there to let us, but there wasn't like we were about to launch missiles. So is it just showing us where our problem is? Is it showing us they have a concern about that? And then when they don't intervene at Nagasaki or, 5 Mile Island or whatever has gone wrong, I don't know how to put that together. I don't know what it means.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to think big scale and philosophically or existentially when it comes to intervening by UFOs. And it could be as simple as the old Star Trek adage of like, do not interfere.
Right. The tribbles are here. We need them off out of the way.
Exactly. So it's all fascinating. I'm gonna try to watch that whole interview and obviously finish Lou's book. But man, that was a lot. That was a lot to cover, Suzanne. I've got one more story, two more I'm gonna cover. One kind of has to do with Elizondo, but I will let you go back to the chat for that one. But I want to thank you for reviewing these clips with me. And any last words before we send you back to the gang?
I think we're watching something happen. I don't know if everybody else's news feeds are showing what mine are on the various social platforms, but it seems like the sightings of inexplicable craft are just through the roof right now. So something's going on there. And then with Elizondo and Coulthard doing their thing, I just think we keep our eyes literally on the skies and follow along and share information to see what comes next.
Absolutely. Keep your eyes on the skies, guys. I can't put it better myself. Great, Suzette. Well, I look forward to any updates you might have on Grush in the near future. And I know I will be seeing you a lot next weekend at
Yes.
Anomacon as
You'll be sick
well.
of me by the time it's over.
Not at all. Not at all. No, I think people will be sick of me.
I don't think so.
But thank you. Thank you for
You're
hopping
welcome.
on tonight. And we even got a little sneak at Bill too. So
Oh,
Bill
you
made
did.
his
Sorry about
he
that.
made his cameo on somewhere in the live
He
stream.
did.
I'm gonna
Cluelessly, but he did.
I'll put him in the credits. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you to everybody for listening. I'm going back
Thank
to
you.
my chat.
Thank you as always, Suzanne. We'll see you there.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Awesome, guys. Again, Suzanne, our incredible moderator, joining us to talk all about the Elizondo interviews. I'm going to go up here because I know I missed a few things, guys. I want to immensely thank Metal Hendrix, as always, for the super chat. And he says the efficiency of decompartmentalization and the possibility that aliens look like us makes me wonder if the Black Ops world is being orchestrated by aliens themselves. Roswell in 47, then in 61, the Eisenhower farewell message. Wow. That's interesting. It's a fascinating thing. We did a whole episode with Eisenhower's connections with UFOs and the possible treaties that we had with quote unquote aliens too. So it's a fascinating theory, Metal Hendrix. 4761 aliens look like. That's a thought experiment. I'm gonna have to think more on that one, man. Thank you so much for the support. Metal Hendrix again, Miss Super Chat. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. A huge thank you to Simon for the super sticker as well. Paranormal Pixie, hello. Keeping my eyes on the skies always. Love it. Solid episode, Metal Hendrix says. Thank you. Jeffrey Tomlin. The last 5 minutes, Lou told Joe he was nervous for him after airing this interview. And Joe said, dude, you're freaking me out. Interesting. Way to end the interview with some melodramatics. Gotta love it. All right, guys. Let's move to our last story of the night. This kind of ties into the whole Elizondo thing. And then I've got one last podcast highlight that's going to leave us feeling pretty damn good. So I'm going to go ahead and read this one for you as we begin to wrap things up. A former senior advisor to multiple U.S. presidents has claimed he was briefed on, quote, otherworld technologies by a top CIA official. This story comes to us from news.com.au. So, a former senior advisor to multiple U.S. presidents has claimed he was briefed on otherworld technologies. Harold Malmgren, I want to say that right, Harold Malmgren, who served under John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, and Gerald Ford. Holy cow. Made the eyebrow-raising claim about the alleged conversation with CIA officer Richard Bissell in a viral post on X this week. Quote, 60 plus years ago, I was provided highest level classifications to lead DoD work on nuclear weapons and anti-missile defense, Malmgren wrote. Quote, informally briefed on otherworld technologies by CIA's Richard Bissell, who has been in charge of Skunk Works, Area 51, and things at Los Alamos. But he was sworn to secrecy. Malmgren had been replying to an earlier thread about, quote, above top secret clearances, in which he claimed to have been told by rocket scientist Lawrence Preston Guise, the grandfather of Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, about his alleged work on reverse engineering of UAP objects during a conversation in 1963. His claim coincided with the publication of the long-awaited book by Luis Elizondo, who formerly worked on the Pentagon's secret UFO program, in which he states his belief that the U.S. government is in possession of advanced technology made off-world by non-human intelligence. Elizondo's claims have been echoed by David Grush, a former U.S. intelligence official turned whistleblower who also went public with the allegations of retrieved non-human craft. Mr. Malmgren wrote in a follow-up post that he was briefed by Mr. Bissell, the architect of the failed 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba, who stepped down from the CIA the following year, and that this was, quote, off the record after his resignation. He said, I, quote, am not seeking public confirmation status, just telling my personal story. Confirmations will be up to others directly involved in the coming months. Interesting. He added that I never directly worked on UAPs nor indirectly used such research in my own work, and therefore cannot be treated as a source of confirmation of UAP info. What I learned was, this is funny, what I learned was sketchy, slightly illuminated by Bissell, as he felt I needed a heads up in case the subject ever came up in my meetings with presidents or others. I swore secrecy to him, not under any law. He also said he did not know Elizondo or have any connection with his book's publication. I simply thought, quote, time has come for the rest of humanity to start thinking about what it means for understanding of the world in which we live. The last quote here that he responded with on Twitter was, like Elizondo, I never looked at this subject until it became impossible to ignore. Here's the question. What is the cost of asking, what if this is true, versus the cost of assuming it is not true and being wrong? Real serious scientists will want to bring all of our new tech to bear on this to prove things one way or another. We have to question those who insist on not investigating all of this. What is there to lose? Nothing. What is there to gain? Possibly a transformation of our understanding of reality. Pretty powerful words. Interesting story as well. I mean, the guy advised 4 presidents. And the fact that he's putting some stock into this is telling, in my opinion. So, interesting. Very, very interesting. Before I forget, guys, I want to go to the poll because I do want to see what you guys said about Elizondo. I asked over on Twitter, excuse me, not Twitter, over right here over on YouTube, in which you are on now. Has the needle moved forward at all with the release of Elizondo's book and subsequent interviews? So, out of 141 of you who voted, 46% of you said yes, it has moved the needle. 27% said no, it hasn't. An equal 27% of you said you're unsure. And can I read that? 0% of you said, who cares? I think that's what it says, if I'm reading that correctly. So there you go, guys. Most of you think this has moved the needle forward. Everything we've talked about tonight in terms of imminent and the interviews with Elizondo and everything that will come from this. I mean, we have to remember we're still in the first week, the first week of all of this with Elizondo and the fallout from all of that. So there's going to be more interviews. You know, there's going to be articles. Who knows what's going to happen? What's The Intercept going to do? That's my big question. What is The Intercept going to do now? So that's about it tonight, guys. I have one podcast clip I'm going to play for you because I wanted to end on a happy note and a really interesting story. So let me kind of set this up for you. We'll play the clip and then we will be done for tonight. So in an interview on the Ron Veer show earlier this week, chairman of the Indian Space Research Organization, Dr. S. Somanath, was asked, quote, do you think our planet is visited by extraterrestrials. And here was his answer. So I'm going to go ahead and play that clip, and we will close things out at somewhere in the live stream.
But do you think our planet is visited by extraterrestrials?
Absolutely, no doubt about it. In my conscience says I don't have a proof.
You're the chairperson of ISRO, sir.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it comes from out of my earlier statement that there are aliens out in the universe. Aliens means living systems are there, cultures are there in other part of this universe. Then they would have definitely visited us if they are ahead in technology than us. Say 1,000 years, 10,000 years ahead. 10,000 years again is also minuscule time scale in the evolution of the universe. Just imagine a society which is 10,000 years ahead in technology compared to us. Where will they be? They will be frequently coming and going out of Earth without ever we knowing it.
It's the equivalent of us keeping lions in a zoo.
Yeah.
Right? We are the lions in the zoo for them.
Precisely,
like
yes.
Our planet is the zoo.
Precisely, yes.
Do you think that they would be benevolent or malevolent?
In either way, I will be happy never to be in touch with them. I will tell you why. Yes, there is a reason. See, the biology is such that we are evolved out of a common biology that connects every living creature on the surface of Earth. Whether it is plant, whether it is bacteria, whether it is fish or animal, and we are one and the same. You look at the genomics, you will understand this one and the same. There is no nature which is a protein which is different in nature on the surface of Earth. Everything evolved out of single possible life form. So we are all connected in some manner. But suppose something that evolved in another planet would have been synthesized in an entirely different manner. It may not have the similar genome structure, it may not have the similar protein structure, and it is utterly dangerous for all two life forms to come in contact with each other. The moment it contact with each other, something has to overtake the other. This is the nature of the life. Okay, one will not allow the other one to survive. It has to be overtaken and destroyed. So unless they have a conscience about this, okay, they realize these two are different and we need to remain disconnected in terms of the body or the chemistry of it, and keep that apart and work together to find a solution for us to meet each other. Not at the level of the mind and the thought, but at the level of the body. If that doesn't happen, it will cause destruction either to them or to us.
Basically, they might be carrying some kind of diseases.
I'm not talking in terms of disease. It's in terms of the way in which we live. The form of the body, our blood, our way we for example, oxygen. We breathe oxygen. What is the guarantee? Oxygen is the gas that they need for them to live. We don't know. In fact, I have seen a science fiction novel in which they breathe methane in one planet. There is another, and they float on the air with a huge balloon on them. There was a NASA documentary on it. So such forms are possible, and they come in contact with us. It will be extremely dangerous for us, or we in contact with them will be dangerous for them.
Okay. Do you believe in any of these theories like the lizard people or the Anunnaki, which say that probably they've taken human form and they are with us right now on this planet? Because if they are 10,000 years ahead of us, they would have accounted for even this biological problem.
Possible. They would have found out a solution. I don't have a solution today to make these two work together, but they would have already found out a solution.
We're just two lions talking to each other right now. Those are the human beings outside the cage.
True. Yeah, we can talk like that.
Do those scientists at ISRO talk about extraterrestrial life to each other?
There are many people in ISRO who are fascinated by all of this. So whenever we in free time, evenings, when we converse in free times, possibly we talk about all of this, yes.
That was awesome. That was so cool. I love when like people in the space, and I mean, I guess you kind of have to be a dreamer to get into space exploration or the space industry, I guess. You have to have the mind of like a philosopher almost. And this is just such a beautiful way of contextualizing the possibility of ET life and what it would mean and how we could communicate and what would happen if contact were made. So yeah, I just thought it was so beautifully, eloquently done by Dr. Samanath. I want to get his name right. I'm gonna have to look more into his work. I know a few of you said the same thing in the chat. Yeah, so I thought that would be a really good way to end things for tonight, guys. But before we go, I do want to let you guys know that tonight we have dropping for you a brand new episode of the Somewhere in the Skies podcast, Witness Accounts Volume 32. Can you believe it? We're up to 32 volumes of Witness Accounts, the series where you, the listeners, tell your UFO stories in your own words on the podcast. I mean, that says it all of, the prolific nature of these phenomena and how they've touched so many lives throughout the decades. I mean, there's some stories in tonight's episode that go back to the 60s, the 70s. I'm going to be releasing a Patreon episode very, very soon, which covers an extensive triangular UFO flap throughout the 1970s. Over 10 cases, I believe, I've gathered, and all of them have audio recordings, audio reports that were sent to the National UFO Reporting Center. So you will hear from all of those people in that bonus Patreon episode coming in the very near future. So tonight, you could check out our brand new episode of Witness Accounts, and very soon you can head on over to Patreon and hear the Black Triangle UFO wave of the 1970s. And you can find out more about that at patreon.com/somewhereskies. And yeah, guys, I will see you at, where is it? Do I have it? Anomacon this Sunday and Monday, upcoming Sunday and Monday, a week from today, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard. Be there or be square. Get your coffee, whatever you need. We're starting 10 a.m. on the dot. And we've got over 36 speakers that you will hear from talking about all things anomalous. I have confirmed the last speaker today. We are all set to go. I'll be releasing a poster with all of our speakers very soon. So you'll see them all in one place. What else do I have for you? That's it. I honestly don't have anything else to say, so we're going to close it out tonight, guys. The last thing I do want to say, though, is thank you. Thank you to all of you for being here tonight. Thank you for all the super chats, super stickers. A huge thank you to our YouTube members, our Patreon subscribers, our Apple Premium subscribers as well. And I couldn't do this without your support, guys. So truly, thank you from the bottom of my heart to each and every one of you. And a special thank you again to Suzanne for hopping in and going through all of this with us tonight, and her awesome work in the chat as well. Let me go check the start stuff before we go. Make sure I didn't miss anything. James Craig says, super chat for the close. Thank you. Thank you, buddy. Thank you. Thank you. Ruth says, I'm expecting this off-world technology to be discovered to be from one of the world's smallest nations who developed all this stuff while we were all looking the wrong way at USA, Russia, and China. Interesting, Ruth Bradford. It reminds me of the breakaway civilization, sort of this underground, unknown people working and having the highly advanced technology to seemingly one day take things over. As Elizondo said, or Jeremy Corbell said, game over for whoever possesses this technology. So, yeah, that's interesting. Shout out to the best chat in all of YouTube. Metal Hendrix says, thank you, buddy. That has everything to do with you guys and Suzanne and nothing to do with me. All right. Witness accounts gets me through my nights of making donuts. What? You make donuts? That's freaking awesome. And I'm so honored that you're making donuts while listening to the podcast. Send them my way. What's my favorite donut? I'm pretty simple. I like a good glazed donut. I like Boston creams too. Those are pretty good. But you can't go wrong with a good coffee cake or cinnamon roll, whatever they're called. I know there's a million different names for those. Actually, coffee cake's completely different. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. I could talk donuts for hours. Don't get me started, guys. All right, it's going to do it, guys. So from me to you, thank you for watching. This is one of our longest live streams yet. I knew it would be because we had a lot to talk about. But yeah, I will see you at Anomacon next week. And the podcast will continue. We'll have a brand new episode premiering the second night of Anomacon 2. So don't forget that either. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see all of you next weekend as well. And I will leave you, as always, with our mantra here. And that is, keep your feet on the ground, but never stop searching somewhere in the skies. See you at Anomacon.
There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide at all.